This is day 359, getting the full picture. Last night I found myself in one of those conversations that start with promise but end up with fatigue. I was speaking with someone that I respect. We both care about the topic. We were earnest, yet every attempt to explain and then re-explain what I meant, the ground just seemed to be moving under our feet. We were not arguing like in a loud sense. We were missing each other in the quiet sense. After a while, we both knew it. We could not find a meaningful exchange because we held two different pictures of where the conversation ought to be going. In essence, we both lacked context. On the drive home, I sat with that word, context. I thought about how often we walk into moments bare, expecting clarity to meet us halfway. We think our words will carry their own meaning across the space between us. They rarely do. Words need neighbors. They need time and place. They need the long view that stretches beyond just the moment. When I revisited the conversation in my mind today, I noticed three gaps. First, the simple one, the words and their neighbors. I was answering a question that the other person was not asking. They were speaking from a set of assumptions that I did not hear until much later. That is the classic problem of language without its surrounding sentences. A phrase breaks from its paragraph and suddenly becomes something else. You can be precise, you can be careful, and you can still miss the shared center if you do not know what lives around the chosen words. Second, the setting. The conversation took place near the end of a long day at my nonprofit. The room was busy and both of us were watching the clock. We both had to be somewhere. That matters more than we like to admit. The same exchange in a different setting might have been generous and exploratory, but in that room, at that hour, it felt rushed, it felt hurried. A classroom would invite questions. A chapel would invite quiet. A kitchen at the end of the day invites brevity and short answers. The place shapes the tone. Time shapes patience. We forget those two ingredients at our peril. Third, the long view. We each carried stories that had nothing to do with the evening itself. Years of experience, habits formed by success and failure, a sense of what has worked before. Culture and history leave fingerprints on our phrases. I judged the moment with these values of my present perspective. My friend drew from a different season of learning. Neither of us was wrong. We were simply looking through lenses ground by different pressure. By the time I pulled into the driveway on my way home, that lesson had settled in. Context is not decoration. It is the frame that holds the picture. When the frame is missing, I get stuck on a corner and believe I've seen the whole. When the frame returns, the image is not only larger, it's truer. So I tried a small exercise. I asked myself three questions as if I could rewind that evening and insert them between our sentences. What are the exact words that we are using, and what sits besides those words? Where and when is this happening? And what does the setting ask of us? Over the long arc, what forces and norms might be shaping each of our viewpoints? Even in review, those questions softened my conclusions. They drew me away from my defensiveness and leaned me more towards understanding. This is the habit that I would like to strengthen. Before I decide, widen the frame. Before I answer, name the setting. Before I judge, honor the long view. A little patience here saves a great deal of sorrow down the road. It turns out that most confusion in my life is not born from malice or stupidity. It is born from missing pieces. Add a few pieces, and what felt like conflict begins to look more like misalignment. Misalignment can be adjusted. If you practice this in daily life, you will notice small shifts. In conversation, you will pause long enough to ask what the other person might be carrying into the room. Stress, unspoken assumptions, a cultural pattern that influences tone, all of these run beneath the surface. In decisions, you will look past the tactic and examine the system that made the tactic successful in the first place. What worked there may not work here. It depends on the setting. The surrounding conditions are part of the advice. In learning, you will add mortar to your bricks. Facts hold better when you understand what they are holding up. So I went to bed with a simple commitment. The next time I feel frustration rise, I will ask, what context am I missing here? It is not a magic phrase. It is a humble one, maybe. It does not excuse bad behavior. It does not deny hard truth. It simply asks for the frame before I decide what the picture means. That is the kind of discipline that keeps me from needless errors. It invites wisdom to do the quiet work. If I had asked those questions earlier last night, we might have found common ground a lot sooner. We might still disagree, and that would be fine. At least we would be disagreeing about the same thing. That is the gift of context. It turns noise into signal, and it turns judgment into potential understanding.